Chapter 19. The Farmer Returns. The routine returned, the same tasks in the same order, the same tools on the same hooks. He knew every part of it without being told. What was new was that the work no longer held him the way it had before he went down the mountain. Before a window, Rowan rose in the deep dim and tended the indoor tasks. He cleaned the rain catch filter, checked the storage shed for mold encroachment, and prepared the day's food. These things had not changed, and he did not need them to. What had changed was that his eyes went to the shelf now while his hands were still working, to the 2 books waiting there, and twice he caught himself reaching for the textbook with the filter half cleaned. He finished the filter first. The book could wait until the work was done. But now, in the before window hours, he also read. The atmospheric science textbook sat beside the medical encyclopedia on the shelf, and Rowan worked through it the way he worked through steel with a file, methodically, one section at a time. Each passage read and reread until it settled or until he found the exact place his understanding gave out. He worked through how particles moved and settled in the air, how the cloud layer stacked and stirred. Some of the mathematics defeated him, and he marked those sections and moved on. Marcus's observation notes he studied with a different attention. The hand-drawn sketches of flums, the frequency logs, the particulate measurements. He cross-referenced them with the textbook, finding the places where Marcus's data matched the theory and the places where it diverged. The divergences were the interesting parts. He wrote in the margins. His handwriting, small and precise, went in alongside Marcus's notes and the textbook's print. Some evenings he would stop writing and sit with the notes spread before him, the questions outrunning what he could answer alone. Marcus would know what to make of the frequency divergence on page 12. The librarian Greta might know of other books that covered living things in the air. Even Pip, who understood nothing about harmonic patterns, would have asked the kind of sideways question that dislodged a stuck thought. Twice that week, his eye had caught something in the light window column, the recent numbers running higher than they should, and twice he had told himself it was the season and turned the page. He would do the arithmetic properly once he had a full set, and not while he could still call it nothing. Light window. Rowan worked the farm the way he always had, potatoes checked and weeded and watered from the rain catch, root vegetables tended, the solar panels wiped down. The work asked for his body and left his mind free, and his mind kept going back down the mountain. To the market levels and the painted lines on the ground. To the children under the chart that tracked the returning light. To Marcus at the foot of the arrays, explaining that the sun was never quite where a man thought it was, not after the clouds had finished bending the light. He came back to himself standing at the collector with the cloth in his hand and one panel half-wiped, which was not a thing that had happened to him before. He looked at the panel and then at the angle of the mount, and the angle was the thing his eye had caught, not the dirt. Oh, he changed it. The calibration his father had set and Rowan had kept for as long as he had worked. The farm still tracked the light well enough to run the farm, and he had stopped being satisfied with that. In Meridian, Marcus had shown him how the helionaut arrays were not aimed straight at where the sun should be, but at the place the light gathered best after the clouds had bent and scattered it. The same trick worked on a farm collector. To move the mount, he had to break it loose first. His father had set the bolts tight, and they came free one at a time, the seized threads giving a little at a time. When the mount finally swung loose, he held it a moment before he reset it, 3 degrees to the west. It brought in a little more charge across the light window, too little for the farm to notice, but enough to show in his records. He sketched the old angle and the new one in his notebook beside Marcus's data, a trick from a city hangar 3 days west, working now on one mountain. After window, Rowan measured. The light window's duration, noted to the minute in his notebook, the pencil worn almost to its last usable length. He had started sharpening it with his father's multi-tool, shaving the wood back to expose the graphite core. The notebook was filling faster than any he had kept. The cores came on some nights now, in a way it had not before. For years he had listened to it as weather, as the sound the dark made, before he understood what made it. It had been a thing for the rare clear night. Now it reached the mountain 2 nights in 3, and stayed longer before the dark went quiet again. He could not time it the way he timed the light. He could only mark whether it came, and the marks were leaning the same way the light was. Mira got better, though not in a straight line. The antibiotics worked the way Okoye had said they would. The cough loosened in the first week, the deep chest sound giving way to something shallower and less alarming, and the blood was gone from her sputum within days. Her appetite came back, slow and then stubborn, and Rowan put more on her plate and watched the hollows under her cheekbones begin to fill. But there were mornings she stood too fast and had to sit back down before she crossed the room. One afternoon, the cough came back hard enough to frighten them both, though neither of them said so. A day came when she slept through most of the light and woke angry at her own weakness, and Rowan had learned enough not to tell her she needed the rest. By the second week, she was sitting in the garden during the light window, her face turned up, the gray-white glow on skin that had some of its color back. She did not call it remembering anymore. She called it warming up. She asked questions. About Meridian, about the market, about the painted lines and the light credit system and the council mediators. About Okoye, whose clinical precision Mira recognized and approved of from the description alone. About Pip, whose chatter Mira found improbable but whose survival skills she respected. About Marcus and the helionauts and the observation logs and the flums. Filter feeders, Mira said when Rowan described how the flums fed. She was in her chair by the window, the atmospheric science textbook open in her lap, one hand flat on the page and the other resting against her ribs where the coughing had left a soreness she did not mention. That makes sense. All that matter in the air, and nothing eating it. Something was always going to. Empty places do not stay empty for long. Marcus does not know whether they changed after the opaquing or were always up there, Rowan said. Both could be true. Mira turned a page, and the small effort of it showed before she hit it. If they were already up high, the opaquing gave them more to eat. If they came after, the pressure to live through it would have been brutal and fast. She looked at the drawing in the margin. Either way, it ends the same. They feed. The sky clears. She looked up at him. You have read this book closer than I ever did. I have had reasons to, Rowan said. Amira watched him. Then she said, your father did this. Sat at this table with a book he barely understood and turned it into something the farm needed. She looked at the textbook in her lap. You are doing the same thing he did. You just have more books than he had. The light window measurement came on the 14th day. Rowan sat at the table in the after-window hours with his notebook open to the current page and the preceding 6 years fanned beside it, the pages held flat by the medical encyclopedia on one side and the atmospheric science textbook on the other. He had developed a method over the years: record the first visible brightening as the start time, the last visible fading as the end time, subtract, and note the result. The reading was rough, the same eyes making the same call at dawn and dusk, year after year. Rough, but rough the same way each time, which was enough to show a trend even when no single day's number could be trusted on its own. He compared his current readings to the records from before his journey. The light window expanded and contracted by minutes from one day to the next, longer on some days and shorter on others, riding on cloud conditions and pressure and things he could not name. Day to day, it was noise. But beneath the noise, a trend. His pre-journey average for the 30 days before departure, 4 hours and 37 minutes. His post-journey average for the 14 days since return, 4 hours and 54 minutes. He did the subtraction, and then he sat with the result, which was 17 minutes, and stared at it until it stopped looking like a mistake. He checked his method, then checked it again. He laid the same stretch of days against the years before it, to see whether the time of year alone could account for the jump. The previous year showed a similar pattern, but shifted by a smaller margin. 8 minutes of expansion over the same interval. The year before that, 6 minutes. The expansion was accelerating. 6 minutes, 2 years ago, 8 minutes the year after, and 17 this year. The first two fit a slow curve, the kind the textbook described, clearing that fed on itself as the particulates thinned. 17 did not fit. 17 was more than double the year before, a jump where the trend predicted a step. Rowan did not trust it. The comparison was uneven to begin with, 30 days of records against 14, and that alone was enough to make him hold the number at arm's length. A number that good was a number to check, and check again, and hand to someone with better instruments before believing. It could be a clear weather run, a stretch of thin cloud that would settle back toward the curve by season's end. It could be his own eyes, his own pencil, 6 years of a method he had never once tested against anyone else's. Or it could be real, and the clearing could be moving faster than the books predicted, and that was the possibility he could neither prove nor put down alone at a table on a mountain. The flums were feeding and the sky was clearing. That much the long trend showed, even if this year's number ran ahead of it. And whatever the 17 minutes turned out to be, Rowan had measured it from a place that was not Meridian, not the school, not the Helionaut hangar, but a single mountain farm 3 days east of the city, separate from every instrument Marcus trusted. He wrote it down. He checked again the next day, and the next, and the longer light held each time. It was not proof. The daily check could only tell him the window was still wide, not that the jump was real. But it was enough that he could not leave it alone. Mira found him in the doorway that evening, the notebook in his lap, the pencil still moving in the last of the after-window light. She leaned against the doorframe with her arms crossed, the posture Rowan knew meant she had already decided to speak. "You were restless," Mira said. Rowan did not deny it. The restlessness had been building since his return, low and steady underneath the farm's familiar beats. "What did you see down there?" she asked, "that will not let you sit still?" Rowan looked out at the dim. The lowlands were invisible from this altitude, lost in the gray below the ridgeline. But he knew what was out there. The forests with their spiraling growth. The settlements strung together by trade routes and the people who walked them. Meridian, with its walls and its levels and its clinic and its hangar, and the school where 12 children learned under a chart that tracked the returning light. Pip, somewhere in the northern settlements, trading compasses and telling people about a mountain man who fixed a flashlight in 4 minutes. Marcus, on the top level, recording what he could see and waiting for the points of data he did not have. "Horror, everything," Rowan said. Mira was quiet for a moment, and then she asked it straight. "Are you restless because you want to go back?" she said, "or because you already know you have to?" Rowan did not answer, because the answer was the second one, and they both heard it in his silence. Mira did not argue. She had been 3 weeks from dead when he left the first time, and she was upright now because he had gone, and the going was the same thing that would take him away again. She knew the arithmetic of it better than he did. "Then you go," she said. "Not yet. When I can cross the room without sitting down, and not before, because a number that waits a month is still a number." She pushed off the doorframe, slow but steady. "I did not spend that medicine to watch you sit on a porch guarding me. Take it to the man with the instruments. Find out if you are right." She went inside before he could answer, the door pulled to behind her against the cold. Rowan stayed in the doorway with the notebook and the worn pencil and a number he could not check from a mountain. She had made the call before he could make it himself, the way she made most calls, and left him only the part he could not argue with, that the number would keep, and she would not be rushed, and the walk would come when she said it could. He sat with that, and did not pretend the waiting was a small thing, and turned his mind to the walk.
Chapter Guild, Stories for Your Mind.